SETI, an organization dedicated to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, spends time and money pointing giant radio telescopes at distant galaxies. But maybe there's no need to search light years away. One man thinks he may have uncovered evidence of advanced intelligence a mere 94 million miles from here, at the center of our own solar system. From 2006 to 2022, David Toon, a retired Army aviation officer, has been conducting imagery analysis on NASA-archived solar satellite photos. He's reviewed over 5 million and has singled out more than 50,000 that he thinks show suspicious events or objects. Look closer. Set against the soft plumes of energy are hard-edged objects in various colors, shapes, and sizes, all hovering in close proximity to the sun. David believes these are examples of technosignatures, which are defined as signs of intelligent life beyond our Earth.
The images indicate there is a more organized pattern to these objects. The lines, the shapes are all basic evidence that there's intelligence behind it. It's not just a natural phenomenon.
Investigative journalist MJ Banaya says there are many who support the theory of a solar-based civilization. In fact, in 2016, scientific journal Acta Astronautica published researcher Clement Vidal's groundbreaking abstract entitled Stellivore Extraterrestrials: Binary Stars as Living Systems.
Clement Vidal speculates that life could evolve to use solar energy to fuel itself. He refers to these creatures as stellivores.
These theoretical star eaters would actively feed on stars like the sun.
Much like we consume organic material to fuel our bodies, there could possibly be alien life out there that uses solar energy to fuel itself.
Today, as the SETI Institute continues the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, it is giving credence to the stellivore theory as it decides which stars to look at next. But could these hypothetical beings really be actively feeding on our sun? Let's see if our experts can shed any light on the subject. First, physicist Matthew Shadagis immediately takes a bite out of the stellivore theory.
The reason why I don't think this is applicable to our current situation is that in the stellivore model, that is an explanation for certain binary star systems.
A binary star system occurs when two stars orbit a shared center of mass, making them gravitationally bound to one another. Shadagis explains that Vidal actually envisions stellivores as one half of this kind of system.
One of the members of a binary star system is an actual star, whereas the other apparent star is actually some sort of advanced construction or artificial structure that is taking energy out of the star.
Of course, our solar system doesn't have two suns.
Since our solar system is not a binary system, this is not really an applicable hypothesis to the current situation.
Then could it be another kind of alien structure? Perhaps the beginnings of a Dyson sphere? This megastructure, dreamed up by theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson, would surround stars and harvest their power for its alien engineers. But again, Shadagis doesn't see it because he doesn't see solid structures in these shapes at all.
We could be looking at natural gases, plasma, or other things coming out of the sun together with a camera artifact that makes that chunk of gas look more geometric than it actually is.
And astrophotography expert Andrew McCarthy agrees, noting that while NASA only employs state-of-the-art cameras, those cameras do have their limitations.
I think the most likely culprit is simply a camera artifact. The goal behind this CCD technology used by NASA is to just preserve the data it's collecting. But it has a side effect. As these specific camera pixels fill up, they tend to bleed into the surrounding areas. Sometimes that creates unusual shapes in the photos. It's not a sign of any kind of object floating out there near the sun. It's just a sign of how the technology actually works.
But Shadagis says the sun continues to spark intrigue.
Recently, we had an example in the news of a coronal mass ejection. headlines around the world read things like, "Piece of the sun breaks off and forms a vortex and scientists are baffled." And this just underscores how there are natural phenomena that the sun produces that can still baffle us. That doesn't mean they're paranormal or extraterrestrial.
Our verdict? These are unexplained solar images. While we agree with McCarthy that some of these images may be easily explained by camera artifacts, we can't prove it for all of them. We also can't say for certain if this is or is not a natural solar phenomenon. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has now gone on for more than 60 years with no luck. But nobody's giving up. After all, there are still hundreds of billions of stars to investigate. It's May 2000 on Mars. NASA's Mars Global Surveyor probe is sending back photos from its mission to study and map the whole surface of the red planet. But as researchers are going through the pictures, one image is nothing like anyone could have expected. In the right corner of the black and white photo are what appear to be several long tube-like objects embedded in the sand or rock. Let's take a closer look. They feature a series of parallel ridges, almost like a massive corrugated pipe. Former aerospace engineer Mike Barra, who has been studying Mars for more than 2 decades, thinks this anomaly merits further attention.
As a structural engineer, what I saw was what looked like a series of repeating, supporting structural objects that don't look entirely natural.
Mike thinks it might be proof of the existence of some sort of past Martian civilization.
It could have been some sort of hydraulic tube. It could be a way of moving water around the very barren Martian surface, or it could have even been a transport tube. And when you look at this as a glass tube, you see that there's like a compartment there, almost like a little train that got stuck in this corner and couldn't make the turn, and now it's sort of encased there forever.
Corrugated pipes can twist and turn. So author Jason Martell says some suggest this could have been an ancient aqueduct that used gravity to divert water.
NASA recently amazed the UFO community with the announcement that there's evidence for a contemporary liquid water movement on the Martian surface.
NASA says it seems some dark streaks on Mars are actually running water flowing downhill. Still, others claim these formations aren't pipes, but an entirely different sort of structure.
Could these have been some type of a transport tube, also known as pneumatic tubes? Pressure is used to move objects through a network of tubes, possibly from some type of sentient alien that had otherworldly machine parts, which now lay embedded in the red planet's dirt.
NASA has been monitoring Mars since the 1960s, yet thus far, they haven't been able to detect any indisputable signs of life. Are their cameras missing the big picture? Or is the idea of life on Mars better suited for comic books? Let's get a better read from our experts. To kick us off, could these be broken and ancient pneumatic tubes from an alien transport system? NASA geologist Dr. Bob Anderson doubts it. He says this design would be needlessly complex.
If you look at modern transport systems on Earth today, hypertrains and stuff, you don't find these kind of junctions here. Why don't you just run it directly from A to B?
To be fair, if these are ancient tubes, we may only be seeing fragments of them. But why haven't they been seen elsewhere on Mars? This likely also rules out them being something like an aqueduct system.
If this was created by an alien technology, I would expect to find something that dug the hole up, any kind of a pumping system to get the water to go anywhere. But there's no parts laid anywhere that can be seen in the image. And also, it's located in an area where you're not near the polar caps where most of the water is on Mars. Therefore, it doesn't even seem to be in an ideal location.
Yet, astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy believes that water does have something to do with the solution.
I think what we're looking at here is an ancient riverbed, either formed from flowing water or flowing lava that carved out this shape in the Martian terrain. Meanwhile, these lines were formed by sand being brought in by the Martian atmosphere, depositing it, much like sand dunes here on Earth.
And Anderson confirms this is not the only place where we see this on the red planet.
We do know that about maybe 3 billion years ago, Mars had a very valid hydrologic cycle. We had an ocean, we had streams. But since Mars has dried up about 2 billion years ago, what happens is that these channels or these cracks are left behind. And because of the depression there, the winds are flowing down those channels, forming these beautiful lines. So we've seen this all over the surface of Mars.
We have more than scratched the surface on this one. And although ancient aqueducts do sound interesting, we're going to flow in a different direction with our verdict and say that these are wind-blown ripples in sand dunes. Well, who knows? In another 2 billion years, advanced plumbing systems may end up on Mars. From 1969 to 1972, NASA's 6 Apollo moon landings defined a golden age in space exploration. The awesome imagery of those missions made history, but some people believe that this image reveals a secret history.
In my opinion, that is not a natural structure. It's got to be some intelligent species that created it.
In the 1960s, Ken Johnston was a NASA test pilot, but later as director of the Data and Photo Control Department at the Johnson Space Flight Center. He says on one of the moon missions, the astronauts came back with intriguing photographs.
I was in kind of shock. And some of the craters would actually show domes and actual bases.
Bases on the moon? Ken's talking about these rounded dome-shaped objects in the middle of one of the craters. But what's even more shocking, Ken says when he asked his boss about the photos, he was told to stop asking.
And we argued a little bit. He finally said, I don't care what you do, just get rid of those pictures that were taken.
Is it a cover-up? One thing is certain, Ken's not the only person to believe there's been alien activity on the moon. Take a look at these photos. Some believe this looks like vehicle tracks. How did these things get there? Journalist Alexis Brooks says some believe they could be the work of an ancient interstellar civilization called the Anunnaki.
Their technology is said to be integral in the structures that we're familiar with today, like the pyramids. So the question becomes, did this ancient race lay footing, if you will, on the moon?
The Anunnaki first appeared in the ancient traditions of the Sumerians and the Babylonians over 3,000 years ago. Do these images suggest they or another civilization landed on the moon? We asked astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy to check it out. McCarthy starts by examining the photo of the alleged bases.
It really does look like something artificial at first glance.
McCarthy focuses not only on the structure, but on the crater around it.
When an impact happens, ejecta is flung everywhere. Some of it is flung straight up and comes straight back down. And it creates these irregular piles in the middle of the crater that you see here. Frankly, if it wasn't there, that would be weird.
Next, Mars mission planner Jonathan Hill takes a look at those strange tracks. Hill points out that boulders often leave similar tracks when they roll across the surface, but these tracks are perfectly parallel.
My first thought was the lunar rovers driven by the Apollo astronauts.
Hill checks images from Apollo landing sites and comes up empty.
The United States was not the only country that sent wheeled vehicles to the moon.
In fact, in 1970, the Soviet Lunokhod-1 was the first remote-controlled rover to land on an extraterrestrial body, and the width of its known tracks seemed to match the mystery photo.
They look very, very similar to those two parallel line tracks we saw before. But we still can't quite prove definitively that that's what caused these particular set of double tracks.
Well, we don't have proof that the Anunnaki ever made it to the moon. But we do know those moon bases aren't alien-made, while the mysterious tracks look like human handiwork. So our verdict? The bases are natural formations, and the tracks likely from a lunar rover. And here's hoping we get back to the moon soon to make some more. The year is 1964. It's a beautiful spring day in Cumbria, England. Fireman Jim Templeton has the day off and takes his family to a local park near an inlet called the Solway Firth. 5-year-old Elizabeth gathers a bouquet of wildflowers while her father, an amateur photographer, snaps a few photos of the adorable tot on his new Kodak camera. But one shows something no one can explain. Someone dressed in what appears to be a spacesuit can be seen just behind the young girl's head. Take a closer look at that white outfit in what looks like a helmet with a face shield. Sure, it looks like this guy could be planting a flag on the moon. But Jim swears there was no one else behind his daughter when he took the photo, and certainly no astronauts from this planet or any other. The image spreads quickly to newspapers around the world, as does speculation on what this mysterious figure could be. Importantly, the photo is from the early years of the space age, with both the Soviets and the American programs making regular headlines. So the Spaceman theory quickly gained traction. On the flip side, the escalating nuclear arms race fuels wild speculation that the figure was wearing a radiation hazmat suit. Coincidentally, there was a Royal Air Force base used to develop nuclear missiles near the Solway Firth. Some speculated this figure could have actually been a Soviet spy. Intrigue involving nuclear weapons sounds like a stretch, but remember, Cold War hysteria was still riding high just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So what's really in this photograph? A visitor from space, a Soviet nuclear spy, or is it just a decades-old hoax? Let's see what develops when we consult our experts. First, we determine if the appearance of the figure was the result of some camera development trickery.
To do some trick photography in the 60s, some would do a double exposure where you're taking two images onto the same slide of negative. Now, that's not possible to create a scene like this, however, because you would see some kind of ghosting artifacts of this young girl. Especially since her wind is blowing in her hair, it'd be impossible to duplicate that same moment twice for both exposures.
So it seems as though there really was someone or something in the background.
If this was a person with a helmet on, then this arm is actually kind of pointing the wrong way. It's not an arm that's kind of coming out and forwards. It really looks like this is viewed from behind. Now, if I was to obscure the head of the person, it looks way more natural as something being viewed from behind.
And perhaps what everyone thinks is a helmet is, in fact, something else.
That would mean that this dark area here isn't actually a faceplate. It's just the hair of the person. So this is a hat, this is the hair. So I think what we're seeing here is a figure, and they're facing away from the camera.
Based on the figure's anatomy, clothing, and setting, West's best guess is that this is a woman in a hat.
We do have another photograph of the scene. What we see here is the mother. Now, the mother is wearing a bluish-looking dress. We see the top here in this region. It's almost white in this photograph.
The theory is that the blue dress and her hat looks white here due to overexposure. But if it was the girl's mother, why didn't the family notice at the time?
When the pictures get developed, they look at them days or weeks later, they just simply don't remember that that person happened to be standing in that position. No one has a perfect recording of exactly where everybody was stood on a particular moment, like 3 days ago or a week ago.
Based on Mick West's analysis of the clothing, we're going to agree and say it's a woman in a hat.